So once again, the Gospels give us an action, an event in the life of Jesus Christ. And to us who live in a very Western setting, we are unfortunately subject to Western thinking. And what that means is that we always look at the very utilitarian idea of what the gospel is saying. And so, unfortunately, what we have lost is the beauty of the East. And the beauty of the East, which includes Asia, is the fact that there is always a deeper meaning than just the event going on. Now, you've heard me say many times that the Gospels have a much deeper meaning in order to talk about Jesus Christ than just a miracle worker who goes around teaching and doing things that all the prophets before him have done. If we are going to worship Christ, then we cannot see him as merely another person continuing what has happened in Hebrew Scripture, what has happened in the Old Testament. He has to be something more than that, or we are wasting our time, as St. Paul says. So the Scriptures, especially the New Testament Scriptures, have to show what? They have to show Jesus' both fullness of humanity and the fullness of his divinity. So, one of the beauties of the Eastern Fathers of the Church who interpreted this is as much as they saw the realistic and pragmatic action of what was happening, they also knew that there was a much deeper message that was going to be brought forth. In today's gospel, just as in the others that we've talked about, it can be very easy to see Jesus as a compassionate man who sees a woman bent over, unable to straighten herself, and for 18 years, Satan has bound her. And now Jesus comes and, well, actually, she comes to Jesus, and he lays his hands upon her, and immediately she was made straight, and she praises God. Well, isn't that wonderful? So here we have another person doing what all the prophets in the past have done. So why does that make him any different? So there has to be something more than that. So there is Saint Ambrose, Saint Theophylact, Maximus the Confessor, and Saint Cyril of Alexandria saw a much deeper meaning in this. And what we have here, and this is why we have to look at all the words that are in the gospel, all right? So it says, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity for 18 years and was bent over and could not straighten herself fully. What this is this is the condition, according to St. Cyril and St. Maximus, this is the condition of mankind. This is our condition. After the fall, we now became prisoners to Satan, and now we become bent over, and what we see are those earthly things. So the imagery here is, in a very Jewish sense, this metaphor of being bent over and only being able to look at the earth, being able to look at worldly things, unable because of the fall, unable to look into the divine realm. So this is the meaning of her being bent over, is that our inability to stand up and to contemplate those things that are worthy. Okay, like the heavenly realm, all right? And in fact, Maximus the Confessor goes even further, and he says, not only have we been bent over because of the fall, but nature along with us. Trees die, plants die, animals die. They suffer also under the weight of the fall and are bent over, all right? But it is Jesus now that comes and does what? First off, we extend our hand. We ask to be healed. Jesus does not force his will upon us. So what happens is she now sees her and calls and says, I want to be free from this infirmity. She reaches out. There's the metaphor that we now, in recognizing our fallen state, that we cannot rise up, we now call out to Jesus. What does he do? As in his humanity, he has compassion for our fallen state. But his divinity now is where the power of God through the laying on of the hand, that's why the laying on the hand is so important all the way up to priesthood, because it is a transfer of grace, not of essence, but it's a transfer of grace upon us. And he lays his hands upon her. We recognize the message of Jesus Christ and what he's trying to say. And what happens? In the Gospels, it's always followed by eptheos. An immediate response is she can now contemplate the divine realm. She can look up, she can see the heavens. St. Cyril goes further and he says, notice at the beginning here, it talks about that Jesus was teaching in the synagogues on the Sabbath. And so what he says is, what is the Greek meaning of synagogue? Not synagogue. Syn means what? Together. And ago means to go up, to assemble. Synagogue, let us assemble ourselves together. He puts the metaphor together and he says, with Jesus' healing, he says, the soul has assembled its thoughts together towards God, and now gaining rest now brings true meaning to rest on the Sabbath. So this is why Jesus was laughing at the Pharisees, because the Pharisees were seeing this in a very Western way. Here's a woman who is sick, and she can't pick any other day than the Sabbath to get well? No. Jesus says the true idea of rest on the Sabbath means that our thoughts are allowed to look away from earthly things, bent over, but now to be free to contemplate the divine. And that is what grants us peace and stillness. And this is the rest on the Sabbath that Jesus wants us to see. But the Pharisees, unfortunately, are still bent over and are unable or unwilling now to allow Jesus' grace now to change them. So if we just see this as just a wonderful thing that a compassionate Jesus has done, we have missed the point. We have reduced Jesus to being just another prophet. And then he has no power on earth to do anything. He has to be seen how the East interpreted it. And they look beyond just what is written here, and they look for what is the deeper meaning that the Gospels are trying to tell us. And this is how we read Scripture. And this is why it's so important that we study Scripture with a spiritual father, like St. Cyril, or like Ambrose, or like St. Maximus the Confessor. Because by ourselves, all we can gather from this is utilitarian things like Jesus heals a lot of people and he's a really great guy. And then this isn't worth anything then. We have to see what the Gospels are truly trying to tell us. And here is another example of where there's a deeper meaning.